Hello, everyone, and welcome to our Fort Collins Book Fest session on herbal ecology. Very excited to be joining you live virtually here from the Equinox Center of Herbal Studies in Fort Collins. My name is Chelsea Gilmore, and I manage all of the events, arts, and programming over at Wolverine Farm Public House under Wolverine Farm Publishing Company, which is here in town. I have been working there for the last 2 years through the depths of the pandemic, and I am just so grateful to be coming to you as a representative of that wonderful dynamic space and to share the literary, visual, musical performance arts that we have to offer for our community. I am also an alum of the Equinox Center of Herbal Studies. I've been studying under Laura Cascardi, the director of the school, here for over 4 years. And I teach in some of the Foundation's school program as well. I'm really excited to be coming to you here today. And I've also, just side note, got to hear Dara, our other speaker, speak a couple years back. So I'm like slightly fangirling. So thanks, Dara. Dara didn't tell you that earlier, but I'm just very honored to be here sharing the space with everyone and to hear what we have to share. So I hope that all of you have been enjoying BookFest this year, the festival, and has all had the opportunity to attend a variety of author presentations. We have another really exciting virtual session lined up this afternoon with New Mexico poets Michelle Otero and Kais Bello. That one looks fabulous. They both look like incredible individuals. Definitely check it out. Before we get started, I wanted to take a moment to thank our festival sponsors. We could not have put on this wonderful annual event without all of the generous support. The Book Fest is produced by the Poudre River Public Library District. Our presenting sponsors are the City of Fort Collins Fort Fund and Colorado State University Libraries. Further support has been provided by Wolverine Farm Public House, the Poudre River Library Trust, Clothes, Pony, and Dandelion Toys. And our media partners are AUNC 1055, the Colorado Sound, and Rocky Mountain Student Media. Our sponsors allow us to offer this festival free of charge for all of our community, so we are eternally grateful for all of them and for all of the amazing volunteers and organizers of the entire thing. Very grateful. So let's meet today's presenters. Dara Saville is an author, herbalist, geographer, mother, and native plant advocate in Albuquerque, New Mexico. She is the author of the book, The Ecology of Herbal Medicine, a guide to plants and living landscapes of the American Southwest. Dara is also a longtime columnist for the Plant Healer Quarterly, has published articles in professional herbalism journals, is a contributing author to numerous herbal compendium books, and is a blogger at albuquerqueherbalism.com. She is also the founder of Albuquerque Herbalism, a bio-regional herbal studies program, and the executive director of the Yerba Mansa Project, a nonprofit organization focused on native plant restoration along the Middle Rio Grande. Laura Cascardi's passion for herbalism, healing, and well-being is evident in her 20+ years of working with herbs and people. She began her formal education with herbs at Rocky Mountain Center of Botanical Studies, where she graduated in 2001 as a certified herbalist. In 2013, she graduated from Colorado State University with a bachelor's degree in biological sciences with a concentration in botany. In 2014, Laura co-founded the Equinox Center of Herbal Studies in Fort Collins, where she is the director and one of the primary teachers. Dara and Laura, welcome to the Book Fest.
Thank you so much, Laura. I'm so stoked to be here with you. Thanks for joining me from Fort Collins.
Yeah, thanks for having me. I appreciate it. This will be fun.
Thank you, Chelsea, for that wonderful introduction, and thanks to the Fort Collins Book Festival for hosting this event and making it possible. As Chelsea said, my name is Dara Saville, and I welcome questions throughout this presentation, so please feel free to submit your questions into the chat or comments forum that you have available. I'm gonna just dive right in and start telling you a little bit about my book, and I'm gonna go ahead and share my screen with you. So here's a picture of my book, The Ecology of Herbal Medicine. And I'm gonna just skate right through this slide and get right into business. This book was really a labor of love for me. It's dedicated to my mentor, Dr. Jerry Williams at the University of New Mexico, Geography and Environmental Studies Department, who was an amazing mentor in my life, who was the person who first and foremost taught me about the connection between humans and landscapes and our integral role in being an active part of place and ecosystems. And so that really is the underlying premise of this book. And I hope that for anyone who knows Dr. Jerry Williams, they can feel his presence throughout it. So what you're looking at here in the slide, in case you don't live in a floodplain like I do, you may not be familiar with jetty jacks. We're looking at a picture of the Rio Grande floodplain where I happen to live on the historic floodplain. And these metal structures that you see here are called jetty jacks, and they are large metal structures that were put in the 1950s to impose further controls on the floodplain. And so nowadays, with all the dams and other things that we have done, water diversions, we don't really need these jetty jacks anymore, but they are a haunting reminder of our continuous and ongoing attempts to control the natural world and ecosystem functioning, and to try to impose our will upon the land. And the book that I've written is really a reminder about our integration into the natural world, and what we do to ecosystems, we ultimately do to ourselves. And this management paradigm of controlling isn't always working out that well, as we see now. Supposedly this summer, one in three Americans directly experienced extreme weather events from climate change, and our propensity to deplete the resiliency of the land. And so we're experiencing now some of the consequences of our continuous attempts to control ecosystems, rather than being an active part of these ecosystems, a fluid, flowing part of the natural world. And consequently, we are beginning to understand really in some harsh ways of learning that land health and human health are deeply integrated. And this is really the underlying premise of my book, The Ecology of Herbal Medicine, is realizing that our health and land health are directly correlated to one another. And someone very conspicuously wrote the word heal on these jetty jacks, which I thought was a beautiful and very adept expression, very simple expression at the state of affairs these days. This happens to actually be right in the restoration area where our nonprofit, the Yerba Mansa Project, operates. And for me to stumble upon this expression in an area we are actively trying to heal was very potent for me. And I thought I would start off by sharing it as a symbol of what we have done and what we could be doing. And I hope that my book will inspire people to understand landscape change and to take an active role in becoming healers of the land as we become healers of ourselves. And just to expand on that, really the point I want to drive home in the book really is this concept of reciprocal relationships. When we give to the land gives back to us. And the book really is most essentially about plants. And so you'll see here on the left a photograph of some kids who I have worked with. In fact, the kid in the front is my son from many, many years ago. We've been working on land restoration projects for about 15 years or more. And here we are helping to replant cottonwoods on our severely damaged floodplain environment. And this act of restoration, of giving, of caretaking the land is something that really comes back to us because we live in this habitat too. We are creatures of our local environment, and the health of the land reverberates directly back to us. Likewise, the illness of the land affects us as well. And so my book and all of the work that I do through Albuquerque Herbalism and through the Yerba Mansa Project is essentially about helping people to discover and manifest this reciprocal relationship. I think when we talk about botanical medicine, it's very easy for us to talk a lot about what plants can do for us or what we want them to do for us. But in reality, it's really important for us to remember that we need to be stewards of plants and their habitats, and only we have the power to change our behavior and our way of relating to land. And we have this ability to change our role from being exploiters or destroyers to being caretakers, nurturers, to being givers. And when we nurture the land nurtures us back, and the same with plants. And so having engaged for so many years in land restoration work, I also have had the privilege and honor of being able to receive back that loving care and vitality that the land brings forth for us. And the picture on the right is a photograph of a freshly prepared plant tincture. For anyone who doesn't know what tinctures are, those are alcohol and water-based extracts of essentially botanical medicinal compounds. And those compounds can extract into a variety of menstruums, could be water, could be alcohol. In this case, it's capturing both. But here I am in the high alpine environments of the San Juan Mountains of Colorado, where I like to go to harvest this particular plant, Pedicularis. In this case, it's Pedicularis parrii, which is growing in this open meadow. And I prepared that tincture fresh in the field with living plant material as a way of engaging in this reciprocal relationship of caring for land and caring for plant populations, and also receiving care back in the form of botanical medicine that can help us all to regain wellness when it's lost, or to maintain wellness that we have. And so this is just a reminder that for us as herbalists, or as people just seeking wellness and health and vitality in our lives, that our relationship with the land and plants is paramount. And when we have a healthy reciprocal relationship, we are not only giving but receiving as well. And botanical medicine is a perfect example of that. There are many other ways to engage in reciprocal relationships, but plants are the ones that have shown me how to do this, how to be stewards, how to be a better person. And that is essentially what the book is about in its entirety. And so I hope that in reading it or attending this presentation today, you feel more excited about the opportunity to become more actively engaged in a positive relationship with whatever ecosystems are around you and that you are living in, and to become stewards of those landscapes, and to both give and receive in that relationship. So I wanted to tell you about a few of my favorite plants today. Laura and I, agonized over which 3 plants we were going to narrow it down to. It was really, really hard, but we eventually agreed on these 3 to share with you today. And I'm going to tell you a little bit about these 3 plants, which appear in the Materia Medica section of the Ecology of Herbal Medicine. The first part of the book really is about knowing the land and understanding landscape change and our relationship with land, as I've already discussed. And the second part of the book, which is the majority of the book, is a Materia Medica that explores 39 medicinal plants. In some cases, it's multiple species. In some cases, a single species. But we picked 3 that we really wanted to talk about and share with you today. And so I'm going to give a little introduction to them, and then I will pass the mic at the end to Laura, who is going to do something really fun with you all at the end. So Juniper is one of the plants in the Materia Medica and also features in the first part of the book in discussing land, because juniper is a plant that I have a really beautiful personal relationship with. And in my book, I include a lot of scientific information, but I also weave that together with personal stories, sensual experiences, and narratives that have been very meaningful to me, to break up some of the more scientific explanations of land change and plant healing properties and so on. Juniper is one of my favorite plants. It's a plant that I think elicits a lot of different kinds of responses in people who know about plants and changing landscapes. It is a quintessential plant of the Four Corner states. And of course, I live in New Mexico, so I live in juniper country. And this is a plant a lot of people take for granted because it's so common and it's everywhere. And in fact, in some habitat types, this can be considered an invasive native shrub that encroaches on other kinds of habitats and altering plant composition in that way. So juniper has a duality to it that I kind of enjoy. And also it's a plant that really has enchanted me very deeply. It's a plant that, as I said, I spent years taking for granted, like many people do. It's just kind of an ordinary thing. We see it everywhere, but this is a plant that is incredibly hardy and drought tolerant, and a plant that will always be by your side. It's incredibly reliable. And this durable character translates into this everlasting, reliable relationship, which I really appreciate that stability in my life. I like having friends who I know I can count on to be there no matter what. And juniper is certainly one of those characters in my life. I live in a very hot, dry landscape where sometimes hiking can involve a lot of excruciating exposure to sun. And juniper is a plant that provides a little bit of very welcome shade sometimes in the middle of these hikes and respite. And it's when you crawl under the shade of juniper during the middle of a long exposed desert hike, you really can feel its medicine just being in its presence. The relief, the comforting relief of the shade and shelter of this enduring personality is very moving in a moment like that. And its function ecologically is to provide this kind of nurturing shade and shelter for many other plant species. In fact, there's about 15 species of plants which are known to exist only in pinon juniper habitat types. And so juniper is a plant that in many ways, in many circumstances, does nurture life. And by providing this protection and this enduring quality in the landscape, the stability. And as a medicine, the juniper medicine is very much like that. So when we learn about how plants are doing their work every day, living their lives in their habitats, it is very illuminating about the medicine that they can provide to us. And juniper is a plant that provides this stability and this consistency. It's a plant that makes people feel safe in vulnerability. If you've ever smelled juniper, you know its incredibly enchanting aroma is very potent, and it's one of my favorite botanical smells. And I really appreciate it just as a medicine or a mood lifting, mood altering aroma. Plants communicate with us in many ways, and aromas are certainly one of the most obvious forms of plant communication. When we like a plant smell, we're really attracted to it. We want to know it. We want to become involved in its life. And perhaps we might even want to safeguard its habitat or help to restore it. And so this is a way plants can invite us into their lives. And we, of course, want to be a part of that when there's something that enchants us and lures us in. And juniper is, as a medicine, it is a plant that is both dispersive and relieving of congestion and stagnation. When you have a really gnarly cold, those aromatic qualities are going to be very decongesting and helping to move your cold. But stagnancy can exist in the body in other ways as well. In the physical body, in your musculoskeletal system, juniper has long been used to help relax the muscles in the physical body, soften the tension and resistance that we feel there. And it makes us feel safe to relax and be vulnerable. It's a very protective plant, as I described in the landscape, but it also provides that for us as medicine. And so it's a plant that I really invite people to work with, especially if you're moving through trauma or difficulty or major transitions in your life. It's a plant that can provide you the safe space for working through difficulty, whether it's old trauma coming up because you've spent time alone in the pandemic, or whether it's new trauma coming up because life goes on and new traumas occur, or whether it's just having a bad day and needing to feel better. Juniper can provide so much to help lift our spirits, relax our stress and tension, and remove blockages and stagnation in our body that allows our blood and nutrients and oxygen to flow on the physical level, opens up our creativity, our spirituality, our emotional capacity. And so it's a plant that really gets us moving and flowing, just as it is in the landscape. When you walk in a juniper landscape, you can smell the juniper moving the vitality through the landscape. And it really does the same sort of thing for us as an herbal medicine. And this can be prepared as a tincture. It's oftentimes burned and used as a smoke or a steam. And also, of course, most belovedly, it makes a fantastic infused herbal oil for massage or processing into other topical herbal products. And here is just one more shot showing you the berries, because the berries are also used a little bit differently than the greenery. The berries are known to herbalists as a carminative, or an herb that can help to alleviate gas and bloating in the digestive system. They're also a really nice urinary antiseptic for urinary tract infections. And they're quite resinous and make really nice syrups for cocktails and the like. And if you're a gin drinker, then you know how good this is to partake in juniper in many, many ways. So if there's any questions on juniper, I was discussing Juniperus monosperma, but there are many other species of juniper too. And I know that Laura will mention a few of the species that grow in her area up the road in the Rocky Mountains. But if there are any juniper specific questions, I'd be happy to take them before I move on to our next plant.
So
and if not, I'm
questions.
What? No questions?
Not so far about juniper. We'll come back.
All right. Well, if you have any, feel free to add them and I'll be happy to address them at the end, but let's move right on to globe mallow. Globe mallow is in the mallow family of plants, and there are many mallows that could be used medicinally that share similar properties. Globe mallow is very common where I live and was one of the first plants to really invite me into the botanical world wholeheartedly. And I'm so grateful for that invitation every single day. So I have a special place in my heart for globe mallow as well. I love it so very dearly that it became the symbol for Albuquerque herbalism and is featured in our logo. And this is a plant, as you can see from this photo, is just exquisite. I mean, I don't know how something so beautiful could exist in the world, but right there it is. And this is a plant that grows all around me. I have lots of it in my yard, and it grows in a variety of different habitat types across the Southwest. And there are also there's also another species, which I'll show you here on the right, the Spherolcia Coxania species, which is a shorter, shrubbier type structure for this species. This has a larger range across the Mountain West and across the plain states as well. Many of the other species that you'll encounter have this longer, leggier structure like you see on the left. But in any case, these are used interchangeably as medicines. And globe mallow is quite possibly, in my view at least, the herb of our times. We live in a time of grand and widespread ecological inflammation. We have a lot of very severe landscape changes that are taking place. Plant communities are responding in sometimes dramatic ways. We're seeing major shifting in plant composition and habitat type and habitat quality. And globe mallow is riding the wave. It is a plant that likes hot, dry, and disturbed. And that's exactly what we are creating in the world. A lot more hot, dry, and a lot more disturbance events. And we're also depleting soil quality. And globe mallow really doesn't mind any of those changes and is aligning with what we are doing in the world. And so I appreciate globe mallow being there to cool and calm the dry, hot inflammation that we are creating through our economic land and water use and through the subsequent climate change symptoms that we're starting to really have to confront. And globe mallow is holding it down for us ecologically, doing its work in its habitats every day by acting as a cooling, moistening component in increasingly hot, dry landscapes and holding the soil down in disturbed places. All of these are functions that allow other plants to grow, holding down soil, creating a little bit of shade and cooling action in a variety of habitat types, from mesa tops to river valleys to foothills and open mountain meadows. You'll find globe mallow in all of these places, which makes it another great herb for us to be learning about because it's not habitat specific. As we change plant communities and change habitat types, through our land and water use and climate change, globe mallow is going to be able to adapt better than a lot of other plants because of this non-specific habitat preference. And again, understanding how plants function ecologically is very illuminating about their medicine. Everything I said about this plant living its life every day and healing the land in which it lives, it's doing those same things for us as a botanical medicine. This is a plant that we harvest leaves and flowers and roots, and it's very water extractable. So we tend to make water extractions and then possibly further process them into other remedies from there. And as a botanical medicine, it is cooling and moistening to hot, dry, inflamed tissues in our body, just as it is in the landscape. And so this is an excellent herb to be used for things like sore throats, acid reflux, dry coughs, and it is also a balancing herb. We just talked about how it makes its attempt every day at balancing landscape fluctuations and climate change effects. And as a botanical medicine, it's doing the same things in our body to balance the inflammatory response inside of us. Nowadays, we have an exponential rise in chronic inflammatory conditions. And globe mallow is an herb that really helps people with those kinds of conditions. And it's not that it's calming the immune system per se, but it is balancing the immune response and creating more effective coordination and a more efficient response in your body. Just as someone who has an over-inflammatory response in their body, the person on the other end of the spectrum who has experiences frequent illness or illnesses that are hard to get over. They may not be mounting the most efficient immune response in a different kind of way. And so globe mallow can soften the rough edges of a person who is overly inflamed, and can also help support a person who isn't experiencing enough of an immune response or an efficient immune response. And so when I first became an herbalist, I thought, how could herbs do these opposite things? This just doesn't even make sense. But when we learn that herbs are intelligent, intuitive beings with their own agency in the land and in our bodies. They bind our bodies to place and to land, and they connect us ecologically with where we live, and they put us in balance with place and with ourselves. And globe mallow is one of these premier balancing herbs that I really recommend everyone know and love, as I do. And I know Laura is going to give you a little bit more on this and tell you about some of the other mallows, including Malva neglecta here, our common mallow. I'm not going to talk about it, but I just wanted to show you these pictures to introduce you to it, so that you have something as a frame of reference, in case Laura wants to tell you a little bit about some of the mallow species that she'll find in her neck of the woods. And then moving on to the last plant that made our top 3 list of Laura and Dara's favorite herbs from the Materia Medica, we couldn't resist the temptation to tell you about a plant that everyone hates, Siberian elm. So this is a plant I love to talk about because as much as I love native medicinal plants, I also love the controversy that comes along with these non-native invasive species. These are plants that get people's hackles up and get people arguing in just a split second. So I can't resist the temptation to jump into the controversy. Now, as a person who has worked in land restoration for most of my adult life, I learned to hate non-native invasive plants early on in my botanical career. And in my work as it relates to ecology and land restoration, I do have some emotional issues with these plants. But as an herbalist and wild food forager, I love them and can embrace them because they're offering us a bounty. And so it's okay to have dueling feelings about plants, and we have our own personalized ways of working through them, which helps us to learn about ourselves in the process. But here's Siberian elm. This is a non-native invasive tree, which in my area in the Rio Grande floodplain is overtaking our native cottonwoods and willows, and in that way is loathed locally. But this is a superior wild food and medicine that we can take advantage of as wild food foragers and herbalists. It is a great antidote to over depleting the slippery elm, which is a famous herb that is highly sought after in herbal commerce and is under a lot of pressure in its native habitat due to land conversion and habitat loss, and also overharvesting. And so this is a weed tree whose range and population density is expanding by the day. And we can weed and harvest at the same time with this plant and help to protect a close relative that is experiencing a lot of pressure in its native populations. So we can do a lot of good by working with these non-native invasive plants like Siberian elm. And so this is a food early in the season. I'm going to pass on to this next slide here, showing you the seeds forming on a branch in the springtime. This is one of the first trees that greens up in the Albuquerque area every spring. It's a relative newcomer. Nobody told it that we're prone to having late frosts, so it doesn't know what the cottonwoods know. But somehow it manages to get around it just fine. And it produces these seeds in the springtime, which you may know as little white, round, papery discs that flutter to the ground by the gazillions every spring, and they seem to have 100+% germination rate, if that's even possible, but it feels like every single one of them grows into a tree. So the good news is before they turn white, when they're still in this green color, when they're still immature, you can grab these right off the tree and eat them. They're actually really delicious. You'd be surprised if you've never tasted these Siberian elm seeds. They have a sweetness, an unexpected sweetness, and they're quite tasty, eaten raw right off the tree. You can also use them as an edible garnish. The seeds inside are filled with really nutritive oils that are beneficial to your body functioning, and eating nutritive wild foods is essential to foundational health. Our food is our original everyday medicine that maintains our wellness, and incorporating some wild foods into our diet is a great way to build foundational health, and to just live a better life, and also to engage in this beneficial and reciprocal exchange with the land and nurturing the land. Harvesting the seeds of non-native invasive plants helps our local environment, and is a way for us to engage with these trees that other people hate, and we can find a positive relationship with them and safeguard more sensitive native plants such as the slippery elm or other native plants in our region that might have similar medicinal properties. We, instead of harvesting native plants, we can harvest these non-native invasive species. I'm going to go back to this picture I just showed you and talk a little bit about the bark, which is where we will find the medicine of this plant. Like its more famous relative, the slippery elm, Siberian elm has a very vital inner bark layer, the cambium layer, and that is where a lot of the vitality of trees moves about. It's sort of like the equivalent of its vasculature system, where oxygen and nutrients and water and photosynthesized sugars are moving about to different areas of the tree in this very vital layer. And if you can take a Siberian elm branch, I usually like to pick ones that are about the width of a pencil or so, and you can peel back the bark, especially in the springtime. It's the best time to do this. Around my area, if you do this right now, you might find it's a little bit dry inside, but in the springtime, if you peel back the outer bark, which comes off pretty easily, you can feel the inner bark layer, which if the tree is healthy and getting adequate resources, you'll notice is very soft and slippery and moist. And that's the mucilage that you're feeling. That's the stuff you've paid a lot of money for when you've bought those slippery elm lozenges. And sure enough, you can harvest it for free, probably coming up in between the fence between you and your neighbor's backyard, which is where I find a lot of this. And so as I'm cutting it back, I'm harvesting it. And that mucilage, that soft, slippery, slimy substance is very similar to what we described with the mallows just a moment ago, that it's excellent for coughing, dry coughs, sore throats, acid reflux. It's great for people who have chronic digestive irritations where there could be minor erosions taking place. It's great for any kind of hot, dry, inflammatory conditions. And something that people maybe don't commonly know about Siberian elm is it also contains salicylic acid or salicin, which is the same stuff that we find in cottonwoods and meadowsweet, and that pharmacists isolated to make aspirin. So Siberian elm contains this salicin that many of the willow family members that I just mentioned also contain. And so that salicin is a plant chemical that this tree uses for signaling. So it produces the chemical for itself and its own well-being and functioning in the world, but it happens to be healing not only for the land, but again for us. And so we can harvest this salicin and use it instead of over-the-counter pain relievers for pain relief, things like arthritis pain, treating fevers, and just the same kinds of things you would use for aspirin or other over-the-counter pain relievers. Siberian elm can provide for you. And also it is antimicrobial. So there's a lot of great uses for this. Who doesn't need pain relief? Who doesn't need antimicrobial activity from time to time? These are all things that every human being needs as medicinal allies. And Siberian elm is spreading all over the world as we create the same kinds of changes in our riparian corridors. Riparian environments are among the most altered environments in the world because humans have been settling along rivers since the beginning of settled time. And so we have created the same kinds of anthropomorphic changes in riparian habitats globally. And so we find the same non-native invasive species spreading through these habitats around the world. And Siberian elm is one of numerous non-native invasive trees that you will find in these areas. And once again, we do find that people really oftentimes hate these trees, but, I am an emotional, sentimental person in some regards, but I also will say, I live in the desert. I like shade. I like having shade trees. And it's no secret that our cottonwood forests are senescing as we pump a lot of groundwater, build more dams, and divert more water. Our cottonwood forests are dying because they don't have the water they need to reproduce and to survive. And so Siberian elm is one of several tree species that is taking over that niche ecologically. And cottonwood trees, as you may know, provide many services to their environment and to people, but one of them is shade. They form a large shade spreading canopy. And as they die off, I'm thinking, well, who's going to provide the shade that allows us to survive in this desert valley? And it's Siberian elms. They are the only of the non-native invasive tree species moving in that do form a shade spreading canopy like the cottonwoods do. So if you can't love them for the food and medicine, you can at least love them for the shade. And so that's a little bit about Siberian elms. And I really hope that I could provide a positive reframe on some of these villainous plants that get our hackles up. And so those are the 3 plants that Laura and I had picked out to talk about. And I know she'll have a little bit more to say about them. And I'm really grateful for her today being able to join us and share her wisdom from her. Equinox School of Herbal Studies and Fort Collins. And before I pass the mic to her, I'm just going to share this final slide with you. If you would like to contact me and connect with me in other ways, if you don't have time to ask all of your questions today, you can find me in these places. Albuquerque Herbalism is my bioregional herbal studies program in Albuquerque, New Mexico. That's where I do a lot of my teaching. Also, you can find me at the yerbamansaproject.org, which is my nonprofit organization where we provide free environmental education programs to the public and engage our community in reciprocal land relationship through land stewardship and restoration activities on our floodplain. You can also find my author page at darasaville.com if you want to find out what new author events I'll be engaging in or find places to buy my book. It's there. And lastly, before I turn it over to the fabulous Laura Cascardi, I just want to thank the University of New Mexico Press and the Fort Collins Book Festival for making this event possible. And I welcome your questions. And with that, I'm going to turn off my slideshow and see what questions you have and make sure Laura is ready to go with the fun final phase of this event here today.
We did have one question come in fairly early that I think you touched a lot to, Dara, and Laura, maybe you can also kind of fill in the gaps. The question was about the reciprocal relationships that you spoke to. They asked, this relationship to land really undermines the goal of land use in a capitalist society and culture. If we leave behind a devastated landscape but have made a profit, we are considered to have done well. How can we regain reciprocal relationships?
Well, that's a great question. And that's something we could probably have an entire semester course exploring. But I will say just very briefly, because I do want to see what fabulous fun Laura has in store for us, just briefly that it is not mutually exclusive that humans can get what we need from our environment to survive and also take care of our environment to survive. Those are not mutually exclusive things. We can be land stewards in such a way that we create resiliency in ourselves and in the land. It takes some brave changes and some smart changes, and most essentially cooperation, which seems, in my view, to be the hardest thing for humans to do right now, is to bring the necessary level of cooperation between government entities, between civilian organizations, nonprofit organizations, and all these kinds of things, people working together. And if we can learn to work together, not only with ourselves, but in this caring way with each other and with the land, these things are not mutually exclusive. They have been so far because we are operating in this paradigm of control rather than mutual care. And many of the systems that we live in, whether it's capitalism, as the participant mentioned, but also our healthcare system is the same way. It's based on profit, not based on care. And so if we shift some of our major paradigms and how we operate within our cultural systems, then we can create new systems or altered systems that do provide the things that people need in a way that is not so overtly exploitive and so damaging to life itself.
Great, thank you for that. I think we will go to Laura now. Laura, you have the virtual floor. Thank you, Dara.
Awesome.
Thank you.
Thank you so much, Dara. Dara, that was awesome. I loved every minute of what you said. Thank you so much. So I just want to do a quick brief on a couple of things. One kind of also addresses the question that was just presented. So one of the first plant that we talked about was Juniperus, and pretty much all species are somewhat interchangeable, especially when we're talking about the leaves. This last spring in April or March or something, we had a huge snowstorm. Right. And what happened was the snow actually knocked a lot of trees over. And so what we did at my herbal school is we actually went ahead and harvested that knocked over tree and made beautiful medicine out of it. Right. So that's one of the ways that you can kind of begin the process of stewarding instead of taking, right? Almost use what's been given to you to make the medicine out of it. And similarly, when you are doing things, when you are collecting herbs, you're always pruning. You're actually encouraging the life of whatever plant you're harvesting, regardless of whether it's juniper or Siberian elm or dandelion, right? We keep the same emotional experience with each plant so that, because humans, we make things go extinct all the time. Like, we're still doing it. We need to change that mentality. So as we harvest 1 in 20 or sometimes even 1 in 50. And we use the weeds in our garden. So juniper, I believe this is Juniperus virginiana. This is one that a lot of people grow. You'll find it in yards. Up in our mountains, we have Juniperus communis. I typically will use what's in my yard. For the berries, I'll use Juniperus communis in the very same ways that Dara used them. Similarly, she showed, this is a little bit dried now, but she had showed some pictures of Malva neglecta, right? So here's Malva neglecta. You may recognize this from your gardens. I don't know if you can see that or not, but Dara had some nice pictures on there. This is the kind of herb that when you're actually doing your gardening and this is growing up, you chop your leaves up, put them to the side, and you chop your roots up and put them to the side and use them in the winter, right? So we're not just like out willy-nilly harvesting, we're actually harvesting what's given to us. But my main squeeze also today is actually going to be talking about Siberian Elm. Ulmus pumila. I love this tree. I don't have the hate relationship with it. To me, we're invasive species, so bring it on. But I do know ecologically that's different, so I don't want to step on that. But anyways, these things, when we talk about weed trees, I can't even tell you, these things will grow 15 feet in a year, and they weren't planted there originally. And then if you like try and kill them, they grow back like 10 sprouts. Like there's no killing this plant. And Dara, I love your description of it, using the seeds as food. It's like you can actually eat them right off the branch. They're amazing. But you can also use the leaves. And so here we've actually made a tea out of the leaves. These are leaves that are dried. And then here is a tea. Oh, I wonder if you guys can see that. I'll put it closer. Here's a tea out of the leaves. And then a tea, okay, out of the twigs that the leaves were on. Okay. And then here is a tea of the peeled bark. Okay. Now, granted, the peeled bark is the most medicinal and the most mucilaginous, but you can use all parts of this tree. You don't have to limit it to just this bark. So when you're harvesting a full branch, so I have a branch over here. This might be hard to see, but when you're harvesting a branch, you can use all parts of it. Okay, when you get to the bigger parts of the branch here, okay, that's what you peel. So this very branch right here, let me just put this down somewhere else. When you, this branch right here made this tea today. So I don't know if you guys can see at home how thick and beautiful this is. But I would urge everybody to go try a branch and try the different parts and see what you like. So this herb, one of the things it does is soothes everything as it goes down. Those mucilagens, whether they're in the leaves or the twigs, right, or the bark, have mucilaginous properties. So as soon as you put it in your mouth, it coats your throat. So sore throat from coughing, irritation, from acid reflux, everywhere down your esophagus, it just soothes. It makes everything feel better. As it gets to the stomach, it soothes the stomach. As it gets to the small intestines, it soothes the small intestines, and then gets distributed throughout the rest of the body to soothe everything. So I absolutely love using this herb for any sort of like cold or cough that feels dry, right? So when you have that pucker in your mouth. Another little FYI about this bark is similar to slippery elm. It's really good at breaking down biofilms in the body. So like if you have little patches of bacteria that are growing, this will actually help break up those glycoproteins that surround everything. And it's pretty amazing on all levels. So really, when you're going in to harvest a branch, okay, I tried to keep some of this out here. When you're going in to harvest a branch, okay, here's our stick with a little bit left. You just go in, okay, and you peel the bark off. You can do it with your hands even, okay? This stuff in here you can use too, but really it's this part that peels off rather easily. And even with a branch, it just bloop. You can keep the outer bark on if you want. The outer bark is brown. The inner bark will separate from it if you want to use it. But honestly, like I always keep the outer bark on because it's kind of a PIA to get completely off. And you can dry it and use it for later. So in this basket right here, I have dried leaves, dried twigs, okay? The dried leaves I got off this same tree. And then for storage purposes, what you can do is grind the leaves just a little bit, just in like a blender of some sort, okay? And keep them for later, right? And this time of year is the perfect time of year to do this. And then the same thing, with the twigs, you can either grind them up or just cut them up with scissors so that you can use them for tea later. And then meanwhile, the bark, you can just lay on a piece of cardboard paper and dry them for later. So I wanted to kind of show you the consistency of each tea, okay? So here's our leaf tea. Okay. And so if you'll notice, it's thick, but it's not crazy thick. Okay. Who wants to be my taste tester? All right, we're gonna have a taste tester there. And you can tell us how thick it is. And then here's our twig tea. A little bit thicker. And then this is the fun one. Here, oh, you guys can't see it. Here is our delicious. Yeah. So I want to show you guys. It's kind of hard for you guys to see, I know. But check this out. Look at the mucilagens coming from that. You can literally see. Can you guys see that?
Mm-hmm.
Right? Like, see that mucilagen around it? That's not water. That's actually the mucilagen surrounding the bark, right? So this is the bark from the tree. Like I said, this is in my backyard. And it's absolutely delicious. Did you taste the thickness? Yeah, it's like yeah. Oh yeah, pass this around. So everybody here is getting tastes of it, but if you have this, give it a try. You're not going to do it wrong. There's no poisonous amount. You don't have to be afraid of this plant. One of the things that you can look for is, here's the leaf. This leaf, a little buggy boo liked it. The base of the leaf is kind of uneven. I don't know if you guys can see that, but it's what's called oblique, right? And so the leaf is oblique. You're going to be hard pressed to misidentify this tree because it, like I said, it grows all over. And I'm going to try and walk you to the tree here. So that's everybody drinking the tea. So here it is in its glory, right? And again, when we're thinking about harvesting, we think about, how are we going to prune this tree so it'll grow more healthy next year? How are we going to be able to use this medicine from the tree so that we can perpetuate growth, right? Because we want these trees to survive. Without a little bit of caretaking, they're not going to survive, you know? And so I think it's important that when we think about using herbs on all levels, we consider the ecological importance and maybe even outside of the box of what we have traditionally considered ecological importance. So I might stop there because I know we're running short on time. We only have about 2 minutes.
Awesome. Yeah, Laura, thank you so much. That was a wonderful tour. We loved it over here. So I just wanted to thank both of you again, Dara Saville, Laura Cascardi. What an informative session. Very grateful to be here and share that with you. For all of you listening, if you would like to purchase a copy of Dara's book, it is The Ecology of Herbal Medicine. You can visit the oldfirehousebooks.com. You can go in person as well. Next on the live stream at the Fort Collins Book Festival, you can join at 3:30 Mountain Standard Time. It is the reading with Kais Bello and Michelle Otero. And finally, if you haven't already, please fill out the event survey. You can find it online, and you can fill that out at the end of the festival. We rely on all of your input in planning future library programs and events. So again, both of you, thank you so much. Thanks to everyone who came in person, who came online. And like Dara said, if you have any questions, I think the contact for her is going to be put into the comments section on your live stream. You can find Laura here in Fort Collins, Equinox Center of Herbal Studies. And we hope you all have a beautiful, beautiful fall day.
Thank you, Chelsea. Thank you so much
for having me. And thanks so much, Laura. I loved being with you today. And thanks so much for sharing your beautiful wisdom with us.
Absolutely. And thanks Fort Collins Library too, the Poudre Valley Libraries. Thank you. What a fun event.